Well, good afternoon. I've had several comments from people who wanted to know how I got up here, how I got to Alaska, started working up here. So I thought, yeah, fair enough, I'll do a video. Anyway, I answered an ad, I think it was on Facebook, for a trucking company that was, they were out of the lower 48, but they were sending drivers up here to work. I'm not going to mention their name for two reasons. One, I just don't feel it's necessary because they're no longer doing that. They're no longer sending drivers up here. And two, there was just some issues, and I'm not going to mention their name. But anyway, I answered the ad, and I live in the Texas Panhandle outside of Amarillo. And they had their trucks. They were based out of Missouri, but they had their trucks in Houston. Their Alaska trucks were in Houston because they were sending them down there to get them get the Arctic package, get them winterized and everything. Which may sound funny to some people, sending trucks down to the Gulf Coast to get winterized, but you got to understand that there's a lot of connection between Texas and Alaska because of the oil field and things like that. There's a lot of freight that runs between Texas and Alaska, so it's not uncommon to have companies down there who know how to deal with Arctic type equipment and how to winterize things and things like that. So anyway, got the job, and went down to Houston. It's about 500 miles from my house. Went down there, picked up a truck, picked up a load down there, and took it to Fairbanks. And that's kind of how it started. That was over a year ago. That was last summer. Yeah, because this is my second winter, or it's about to be my second winter up here. And I say that because winter is going to start up here, or at least up Fairbanks to Prudhoe, up that way. Next month it could start. So, down here in Palmer, Anchorage area, Wasilla, it's a little more temperate. It's not that bad. But anyway, so I worked there for a while, and I got on this. We had a good contract. I mean, I was doing a lot of running between Anchorage and Fairbanks, pulling doubles, pulling sets, as they call them. And I was doing okay on that, and I'd make some runs down the Kenai, things like that. But anyway, doing the doubles, you paid good. But then we got this project hauling explosives out of southern British Columbia back to Fairbanks, and that paid great. And I will tell you, after expenses, after everything, taxes, whatever, I was making about $8,000 a week doing that. Man, I was banking on that, and I was sticking a lot of that in the bank. Thankfully, I was sticking a lot of that in the bank because I went home that November for 2 weeks. That's the last time I was home, was last November. I came back and it all dried up. We weren't doing it anymore. It just all went to crap. So I went probably a month and a half not hardly making any money. So, like I said, luckily I had some money in the bank. I can complain about what happened, and get upset and get angry about it. But, thank God that, my wife and I had the wherewithal to, no, we're going to stick some of this in the bank. We're not going to go crazy with, with it, whatever. But, anyway, so it got really, really bad. So this company was hiring. They're out of Palmer, Alaska. And I put in an application. They also have a yard in Billings, Montana. So I put in an application here, and so I got on here, and I've been here ever since. So I spent last winter up here running the haul road and running. I made a couple of trips down to the states, down to Montana. I actually went all the way to Virginia with one. I've got that video. That was a long trip. Okay, from Palmer, Alaska to just outside of Washington, D.C. in Virginia, that was a long trip. Let me tell you. And then I worked my way back. I got a load out of West Virginia going to North Dakota, and then North Dakota over to Belgrade, Montana, and then got to my Billings yard and put together a load coming up here. But, so yeah, that's how I did it. Now, if you want to come up here and work, I know Black Gold is hiring out of the lower 48 to do their runs out of the mines. In other words, from Tok, Alaska to the Fort Knox mine north of Fairbanks. They've got a man camp down there and everything. Now, there's Black Gold Express and there's Black Gold Transport. They're both owned by the same people, but they do different things. Now, Black Gold Express is not going to hire you to run the haul road because you have no experience running the haul road. Black Gold Transport, though, will hire you to run their mine, their trucks going in and out of the mine. They're pulling double trailers, side dumps. And as long as you have driving experience, they'll hire you. It pays so much an hour. I forget how much it pays an hour. $30-something an hour. You get a little more for night shift. Now, I'll tell you this. In Alaska, anything over 8 hours a day is overtime. Doesn't matter if you only work 20 hours a week. If you work over 8 hours in a day, you're going to get time and a half. You're going to get overtime. So those guys are running, I think, 12-hour shifts. So, and I think they're working on a 6-and-2 rotation, 6 days on, 2 days off, something like that. Like I said, they have a man camp there. And so you could look into something like that. If you live in Dallas or Houston or Washington State, I believe they have a yard there too. Linden Transport, you might be able to get up there. They're an Alaska company, but they got some terminals, down in the lower 48. They got Edmonton, Alberta. They have a terminal. So Corcoran Trucking out of Billings, Montana. That's our sister company. You could possibly get to Alaska with them. Can't guarantee that, because most of the stuff coming up here from Corcoran, we bring it up, or there's a couple owner operators that they do it most of the time, simply because they're experienced running the Alcan back and forth. So I'm not saying it wouldn't happen, but Carlisle has a yard in Houston, and I believe in Washington State as well. The reason why a lot of these Alaska companies have a terminal in Washington State is a lot of stuff comes up on the boat, and it usually comes up from the Port of Tacoma, Washington, up here. So that's why a lot of Alaska carriers have some sort of affiliation down in Washington. It's just the closest, of the lower 48 states to Alaska. And so a lot of stuff comes up, like I said, up on the boat, on the boat. And of course, they have yards in Texas because, like, there again, the oil field, the oil industry, oil and gas industry. There's just that natural connection. Same thing with Texas and Alberta. Canada, just a natural connection there. North Dakota too, But they've been doing oil and gas in Texas since the turn of the last century. So most of the facilities are based out of Texas. And, anyway. So yeah, that's, I'm trying to think of any other ways you could get up here. I mean, you can come up here and you can answer ads. The internet makes this much easier, right? I remember 20-something years ago when I first started hearing about driving up here and the haul road and the ice roads and all that. And I wanted to do, of course, this was before the internet. So it was more than 20 years ago, actually. I keep forgetting, man, we've had the internet around for a while. This is probably the early 90s. I read an article on it. And I was like, well, that'd be interesting. I've always wanted to do something adventurous. I'm that kind of guy. I like to do things that other people can't or won't do. Because I've always learned if you do the things that other people can or won't do, that's where the money is. Because if everyone were doing it, it wouldn't pay, right? I tell guys in the trucking industry that all the time. If you just want to bounce between California and Florida all winter because you don't like to be cold or whatever, you can do that and you can make a decent living, but don't complain about, well, I should be making 6 figures or whatever. Well, then you need to start running up to Pacific Northwest in the winter and hauling apples. There's a lot of apples come out of there, and the rates are good because there's usually a shortage of trucks. So anyway, that's just a little sidebar. I'm just saying, I've always wanted to do different things, different than other people. That's why I'm driving in the oil field and things like that. But yeah, so I always wanted to come up here. But with the internet now, it's so easy. You can apply on these jobs, man. You can go to their websites and apply, and call them and just say, hey, I'm looking to come up there. Maybe you're coming up there to live, to stay, but I'd like to have a job, because there's more up here than just running the haul road, because no one's just going to stick you on the haul road. You got to have experience. And the way you get experience on the haul road is you get in with a company up here, and then maybe you, if they run the haul road, they'll let you follow a guy up there a few times and, kind of get you trained on it. But you can make decent money up here. There's a lot of guys just run between Anchorage and Fairbanks, or down to Valdez, or down to Seward, or Kenai, or somewhere like that. And they do all right, or they run the Alcan or something, and they, it's perfectly good money. Nothing wrong with it. So it's whatever you want to do. It's not all about the haul road or the ice roads, man. It's not. That's not what it's all about. Not all of it. But you can do that too if you want. I would have been perfectly happy to keep running explosives out of BC back up into Fairbanks. I could still be doing that. I wouldn't have one problem with it. Especially with the money I was making. $8,000 a week, man. Now that was lightning in a bottle. You're not going to find that all the time. I can tell you right now, I do good here, but I'm not making what I was making doing that. Part of that was the fact that it was explosives, and Canada, you had to do it in a team truck, because Canada with explosives, you can't stop. The truck can't stop. I mean, obviously you can stop for fuel, whatever, but you can't stop and take a break with explosives. It's got to have 2 drivers in the truck. So they gave us extra for that. And the mine was desperate. So, it was a very lucrative contract for a while. But yeah, that's how I got up here. So that's about it. Nothing really exciting. If somebody wants to come up here, I can tell you right now, you can do good up here. You can make good money. But it's like I said, I think in my last video, you're not going to come up here and just hold a steering wheel. It's not going to happen, bro. You're going to be expected to do things. And you know what? Like here, if they need me to get on the Bobcat and do some work, I get on the Bobcat and do some work. The articulated loader, we've got a dozer on the property. You do a little bit of everything. And you don't just pull one type of trailer, or very rarely, I should say. If you're a fuel hauler and that's all your company does is haul fuel, then yeah, you're probably always going to pull a tanker. But most of these companies, most of these big companies, whether it's Linden, whether it's Minalaska, whether it's Carlisle, whether it's Weaver Brothers, or Big Dreams, or Black Gold, or whoever, STR, Alaska West, I could go on. But you could be pulling a reefer one day, you could be pulling a flatbed, a bulker, a drop deck, a tanker. You could be pulling a set. Just about anybody who runs Alaska, some of their guys at least are pulling sets, pulling double trailers, double 45s, or 53 and a 40, something like that. Big sets. They're not the little pup trailers like you pull down south. So my advice is make sure you have your doubles and triples in your hazmat and tanker. you will get a lot further up here if you have those endorsements. And I'm going to tell you right now, they're going to want you to, at the very least, have your doubles and triples endorsement. You've got to have your doubles and triples endorsement, because most of these companies, especially if you're not going to run the haul road, because they don't run doubles up the haul road, but they'll run doubles from down here to Fairbanks and then split them up and make 2 loads out of them to go up the haul road. So almost every company up here is going to have you, or is going to want you to have your doubles and triples endorsement, which is easy to get. That's not difficult. You take the test for it. Hazmat, as you know, is a little more difficult, but it's still not that bad. Tanker, well, a lot of companies want you to have the tanker endorsement along with your hazmat, even if you're not pulling a tanker. I know some companies down in the lower 48, they want you to have the XT. They want you to have hazmat and tanker because of insurance reasons. Even if you're pulling a dry van or a reefer, they still want you to have that XT, that hazmat and tanker. So don't just get the hazmat if you don't have tanker. And of course, a passport. If you're going to fly up here, even get you a passport if you don't already have a passport, because that opens up more doors, because maybe they'll send you down the Alcan to run into Canada or run down the lower 48. You know, you can't get out of Alaska by truck unless you go through Canada. It's the only way it's going to happen, unless you put that thing on a ship. You know, you're not connected to the rest of the country. So, you know, you are in America, and they're very patriotic up here. You know, believe me, they don't consider themselves a foreign country. They're very patriotic. They love America up here, but you're not connected to America. So if you want to, or maybe you want to buy a car, maybe you fly up here and you want to buy a car up here, and maybe you don't want to work up here forever and you want to go home, you got all your stuff, and you don't want to just leave it up here or pay God knows how much to ship it. So you get a vehicle. Vehicles are pretty cheap up here too, by the way. And you got to go through Canada, got to have a passport, you know. So get your passport if you don't have a passport. Get your passport, get your doubles and triples, get your tanker and hazmat. And it might not be a bad idea to get your TWIC. Although I don't have a TWIC card, and I've gone in and out of the Port of Seward, and no one's ever given me a problem about it. But you're technically supposed to have one. Technically. So, yeah, I would say get those things. You know, the TWIC, you don't have to stress over, you know, but the rest of it, yeah. Passport, doubles and triples, hazmat, tanker, get that if you don't already have it. So I think that's about it. So I leave tomorrow to go to Anchorage to drop my trailer, and then I stay in Anchorage overnight, and then Wednesday back up north. And hopefully the rain has stopped up there, because our poor yard guys, man, that truck was such a muddy mess. In fact, I think he's washing my trailer right now. Yeah, they earned their pay this week. So anyway, that's about it. Like I said, people want to know how I got up here. That's how I got up here, man. It's not really all that difficult. And the busy season in Alaska is the winter. Okay, it's winter time, because that's when the ice roads are opening up north. The ice pads, they put a lot of those rigs on ice pads, and that's when things get busy up in Prudhoe. So that's when everything in Alaska gets busier. The tourists are gone. You know, you pretty much got the roads to yourself. The haul road is a lot smoother because it's got a, you know, it's got a layer of snow on top of it. So you're not feeling all those bumps and holes and things like that. All the holes get filled in. Same thing down here on the Parks Highway. It just makes it a lot better. But of course, you got the weather conditions you have to deal with. So there's always something. It's either the tourist and the bad roads or the weather. I'll take the weather any day over tourist and bad roads. You know, I'll take all the avalanches and everything else, as long as I don't get caught in one. I'm good. So yeah, that's about it, man. It's just if you want to come up here, start looking around, different websites. There's several companies, trucking companies up here. Just Google trucking companies in Alaska. Like I said, you know, you got Linden, Carlisle, Alaska West, STR. If you're in the heavy haul and stuff, STR and Carlisle does a lot of heavy haul. Linden does too. Weaver Brothers, they're union. So you got to get a union card. Big Dreams, Black Gold Transport, Black Gold Express. Like I said, Black Gold Transport is the ones who are doing the belly dumps back and forth from Tok to Fairbanks. And they've got the man camp. So, you can look them up. And, oh God, I don't know. There's several companies up here. Metcalf, which they've got a yard in Idaho, and one up here in Fairbanks. So, yeah. So, check them out. And come on up and have an adventure, man. You're going to love the hours of service up here. 15 hours driving, 20 hours working, no 30-minute break. The clock actually stops when you go off duty instead of that ridiculous crap they do down there. So if you get held up somewhere, you're not sweating. You're not sitting there watching your time tick away. And you're not even doing anything. It's like, how can I be off duty and my time ticks away? That makes absolutely no sense. But, you don't get that up here. You run Alaska hours of service up here because there's no danger at all of you crossing the state line into another state and oops, now I'm out, I'm out of hours because, you don't have that problem. You cross over into Yukon territory and they're 20 and 15 they're 15. Yeah, they're 15 and 20 as well. So you're good there too. No 30-minute break, like I said. Nowhere in Canada either. So that doesn't get in your way. So yeah, it's you'll love the hours of service here, man. You really will. It's and look, you don't always you say, well, I'm not going to drive my 15 hours. Well, it can take you 5 hours to go 180, 200 miles on the haul road, depending on the shape of the road. So, you burn a lot of hours just because you're driving so slow in some places. Now, if you're bouncing between Fairbanks and Anchorage, yeah, you can do that easy. That's about 6 hours, six and a half hours one way. So, you can do that in 15 hours. You can do a trip up and a trip back pretty easy. With time to spare. It's all good paved highway, so you have actual real truck drivers up here, and they watch out for each other. Everybody's got everybody's back. It's not like the lower 48 where everybody seems to be out to get each other, yeah, you got real drivers doing real work up here, and I like that. But anyway, that's about it. I appreciate you watching. If you like it, subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. I could go on a rant about what's going on right now. I'm not going to, as far as the whole immigrant driver situation and all that. But I'll say that for another video. That's not what this video is about. But believe me, I could go on another rant like I did the other day. But I'm not going to. Thinking about it, but I'm not going to. But anyway, I appreciate you watching. Like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate that. It gets the videos out there. It gets into the algorithm. And like I've said before, I'm not on YouTube to make a living. I make a living driving a truck. But, I like to get the videos out there. And there's a lot of misinformation out there about the trucking industry in general. Not just up here, but everywhere. So, I like to, I like to set the record straight. And if you have any questions about that or anything, just stick it in the comments. I think most people notice I try to go through all the comments. Although as the videos get more popular, it's getting harder and harder to do because I don't have a lot of free time. But I still try my best to sit here and scroll through all the comments, and react to them at least as much as possible. So if I miss you or skip you or something, it's nothing personal. Please forgive me. It happens. So again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.